Hey everyone, it's Jonathan from Motorpsychology. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Your support, as always, is greatly appreciated. So in today's video, it's a quick video about taking the old rear shocks and replacing them with new rear shocks on a 2009 second generation Ford Escape, or otherwise known as a Mazda Tribute as well, if you see them out there. So quick video, I'm going to show you the steps that I took. You could do the same and easily replace your shocks that way. So stick around, let's dive into the video and see how it goes. So these are the gas shock absorbers that are for the rear of the Ford Escape. Let's open one up and see what we get inside. There's the general structure of this thing. Pretty straightforward, pretty normal for a daily driver. So this is the shock here. They are shipped under compression, and that's the way they need to be installed as well. Once you have it installed, you can cut this thing or get this thing off. Let's see what hardware it came with. So the hardware that it comes with is for the top of the shock. That's it. What it doesn't come with is the big nut and bolt that attaches this to the rear part of the car. So I'll have to repurpose that. Hopefully it's not too corroded and should be able to use that. So let's get these things outside and try and get them installed on the car. So now the front's done. I got to put on the shock absorbers on the back. So I'm going to get around to doing that. So we've got two rears that we need to get done over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jack it up. I've got the front wheel already blocked. I'm going to jack it up and take the wheel off and then change the shock absorber, which is located right here and down at the bottom there, which I'll show you. And it should be fairly straightforward. That's keeping my fingers crossed, you never know. And first we have to go in the hatch and remove a whole bunch of panel. So on this vehicle you've got to remove this plastic part here and also the plastic sides on both. So I'm going to get into doing that right now. So first of all, this thing pops up. Most of the time it's just pressed in, but I see that there's a screw in over there, so I'm going to take that out. So just to be clear, underneath this bump here is the top of the shock, and you need to get this thing open before you can get access to that. Same is true for this one as well. It's just over there in that area. So you've got to get this panel off. They're not too hard to get off, but will take a little bit of effort. So first of all, this bottom part comes off. This part is not factory, it's just an add-in. So this part here comes off first, and there's supposed to be these press down pins underneath here, but this one is, oh, you can, there we go. You just kind of feel around for it. There. All right, there's this thing off. Yikes. Obviously was not put in properly, but whatever. So this part is off. We can take this carpet out for now. I'm going to take this thing off too. And the other thing that you need to do is push the seat forward as well. Come on, there we go. That should be good enough. And we're just trying to get access to here. So it really should be about just loosening these things and just finding the areas that they're, there we go. gonna hopefully leave that thing on here. So you'll be able to see, here's where the shock goes right here. So I'm just going to keep this thing pried open. I'm also going to put some rust inhibitor in here since it's getting a little bit flaky there. But that's what I wanted to get access to there first. So I've got the car jacked up, but I've also lightly pulled that out, and I'm using a stick just over a foot long. You could probably do it with a foot. And that allows this space here to be open to the shock absorber. So I'm going to undo that. The top for that is 9/16, and I'm going to use this ratcheted wrench to take it off, and this thing here to hold the top if it starts to spin. So let's get these things done. Make sure this is in the right direction. So this part is pretty straightforward. And I should be able to just take that off. All right, that's a positive to get that out. So we're down looking at the left rear. So this thing's got to come off. That has to come off, and this needs to be compressed a little bit. So I'm going to jack the rear sway bar up a little bit so it'll compress the shock a tiny bit. So first I'm going to loosen that and see if I get lucky with that. All right, I've got a big wrench in there, and I'm going to use my impact gun to loosen that. We'll start off at a fairly slower speed, I guess. It's always a tough spot getting these things off. Ah, there we go. This one is off, or loose enough to get off anyway. And just keep in mind how it's set up with the washer. Let's put that over there, put the washer there, and I've got to crank up the trailing arm a little bit, and that'll compress this shock, and then I can tap that out with a rubber tip or plastic tip mallet. Okay, so you can see there I've got the trailing arm jacked right up, and it's compressing the shock as much as possible. So now I got to tap that bolt out, and then hopefully things will be good. I'll be able to put the new one in. So from a safety point of view, got it on the jack stand as well. Try a larger mallet here. So we're looking at the rear shock here. This is the bolt that attaches it to the knuckle here, and you want to make sure that you've got this weird thing aligned so that it will pass through a tiny space in between here and the brake drum. So I'm just tapping this thing out as much as I can, and hopefully I'll get it out shortly. Well, I'm a little bit tight on this side, so unexpected, but let's see what we can do. The plan now is, this obviously is not going to come out, so the idea is you push the shock off of here, and then there's no requirement to take that off. So I'm just going to pound that with the hammer and it should fly right off there. All right, there we go. So that's knocked off. Now I can just pull it straight out. There, one shock out. There's the one shock out, and time to put in the new one. We're back up top here. I'm just going to pick this bushing out. There we go. And you can see what way it will go down, that way down. So I'll get the new bushings and set it up. All right, here's the new shock, the bushings, the hardware, and it's ready to go in. So it goes in from the wheel well. This part here sticks up through the hole and through the bushing, of course. So before you put it through the hole, you want to make sure that you've got this part on this way around, this part on like this, and then you're good to put it up through the hole through the wheel well. Just resting the shock on there until I get the top done. So you normally want to have bushing on bushing, so this will go on first, then it'll be capped by this guy here, and then finally the screw will go on. So there's your sandwich right there. All right, let's stick that in. First, the bushing. Done. The cap. Done. And the screw. So I just tighten it enough so I start to squeeze the bushings and it's nice and tight. So that one's done on this side. All right, that's what we're looking at here, just trying to jack that trailing arm up enough. And there we go. Now we'll tap this thing in. That stays, this part here stays right here, and then we'll torque that up. This thing down here has a torque of 129 foot-pounds, so it's probably going to be hard to do from down here. All right. There we go. 129. Can now clip this thing off. All right, there we go. That shock is in. Just going to close this up, but before I do that, I'm going to spray in some rust converter. And we're going to close it up now. There we go. This panel is back in, and it's going to be a repeat of this side. All right, let's put everything back on this side. can lower it down now. Yeah, it's a little hard. Loosen this slightly before jacking it up. Jack it up. We've got this side opened up here, and as you can see, way down here is the top for the shock. This one's a little bit rusted, so I put a bit of penetrant on it, and hopefully it'll come off no problem. Yeah, fortunately it's coming off no problem here. If you can get that off. There we go. That's off. Ready to slide out. Pop this one off. There we go. So we've got it unscrewed, just got to hammer that out a little bit. A giant hammer. Knock this in a little bit, as far as I can. There. Now I got to get this out. Raise it up a little bit. That one's out. There's the other shock. Just going to open the hardware here. Same as before. We'll set up the bottom part first. So stick this thing on. Stick that on. And then that can go through the top over here. All right, there's the top of the shock, and I'll get that nut on there. Tightening this thing up. There's the top of the shock in there, and I'm going to use some hot glue and just glue this thing back, and then I'm going to put the panel back and then attach the shock at the bottom. Okay, we're down here now, and I'm just going to raise the trailing arm up enough so I can line that bolt up with the shock. And it looks like I have to go up about an inch. Okay, so you can see how that was lined up. Now I'm just going to punch this thing through. Alright, shock is through. So just putting on the washers again and the bolt. And this is once again torqued to 129 foot-pounds. Torque it with the torque wrench. So that's torqued up. You can cut this thing now. All right, let's give this a cut here. There we go. There we go. Down here. There we go. All right, now put this thing gently back. Line up the little clips. There we go. All right, closing this up for now. Hey everyone, that concludes the video on changing the rear shocks out of a second generation 2009 Ford Escape, or the equivalent, which is a Mazda Tribute. So hopefully you saw that it wasn't too hard, and some of the techniques that you could use as far as accessing where the rear shock fits in the trunk space, and also some of the tricks on the bolt as it comes out where the rear drum is. So hopefully you found the video useful, if not entertaining, and we'll catch you all right back here at Motorcycology next time.